think we're lacking a lot in at least grounding ourselves and understanding that the paranormal is becoming more normal,
Yeah.
and it's not scary when you understand it fully.
I don't want to waste any more time talking about anything else, Jesse. Can I talk about Clyde Lewis now?
You can.
All right, thank you. Clyde Lewis is an American talk radio host and conspiracy theorist. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's a conspiracy theorist is a CIA operative name they made up to try to make people think, things are not true. He deals with conspiracies, maybe consider himself a theorist. I don't know. We'll find out. But I would say he deals with conspiracies. Of historical and current events, he is a creator and host of Ground Zero, a talk radio show on KXL FM and distributed by Premier Networks dealing with paranormal and parapolitical topics, which we'll probably get into both today.
Yeah.
In 2000, Lewis moved to Portland, Oregon to become nationally syndicated at the MBG radio network. Ground Zero was aired on several radio stations across the country, including KXL in Portland, KBER in Salt Lake City, and notably WAUR in Chicago, which on Thanksgiving weekend of 2000, he aired a 72-hour Ground Zero marathon.
Whoa.
Man, that's like Jimmy Stewart it goes to Washington.
That's what we're gonna do on Thursday.
Yeah, but but he did that live.
Oh, yeah, we're not doing that.
This is like Jimmy Stewart in Washington. He's not leaving the floor of the Senate because he wants to get his point across. Anyway, so he produced Liz Wild's show for MBG now, and the show is still being broadcasted nationally on weekends. Well, he's a busy man, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific time, and also XL FM in Portland, as well as a site. You can check him out at groundzeromedia.org, groundzeromedia.org. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Clyde Lewis. How you doing, Clyde?
Doing really well. Thank you so much.
Oh, listen.
For being on the program today.
No, absolutely. I think Jesse's going to play a little clip here for us, Clyde, and I'm going to show a little bit what's been in the news lately, all right? And then let's talk about this.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like another thing, it's rotating.
Well, I'll tell you, that's it. So that was in the New York Times. It was also on the ABC channels. This is okay. How historic is what just happened this last day or two in the UFO circles of how the media just came out to share finally that UFOs exist and the government's been paying for it and following this so far for who knows how long.
I would say it's a big move to have Pentagon come forward and admit to anything. What's interesting is that for the longest time, the Pentagon and several other agencies have ignored or denied the idea that they've been investigating anything that would even smack of unidentified flying objects. But see, the thing is, the terminology for the military and the terminology for the Pentagon is different from those of us who investigate. In fact, they don't call them UFOs anymore. They either call them unknowns or unidentified aerial phenomena. And not only that, but their investigative team is now called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, basically stating that any UFO, regardless of what it may be, it's one of ours, one of theirs, or even one of theirs out there, is a threat to national security. And they most certainly, I think, are putting together a plan. And I think one of the reasons why they've come forward with this, they're putting together a plan to actually construct something that would be called the space fence, or a protective barrier, to keep things out, like near-Earth objects or UFOs or something else. That way we have a protection shield in case any hostile alien or whatever, or any hostile probe comes from another planet. I think they're very concerned right now. I think they're on the edge of their seats, most scientists now, because of what happened with Oumuamua, which is this asteroid that came in from interstellar space that looked a lot like I guess you could call it the disheveled Battlestar Galactica type of thing. It looked like a rock, but upon close examination, we have this red, strange-looking thing. I mean, most of the things we've seen on the internet are nothing more than artist conceptions, but it certainly prompted people like Stephen Hawking to demand that Breakthrough Listen, which is a group that is a branch of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, send out signals to try and pick up some sort of communication that may have been sent out by this asteroid, if it was something alien or not. I mean, this has happened before with other comets and meteors and things that they've explored that sent out some signal that sounds like some form of communication, but of course they're going to keep that from us. And I think this is just a trickle-down form of exposure, which is it's kind of a multi-level report where we've had a number of things, like psychiatrists now are preparing for possibilities of their patients reacting to the announcement of alien reality, or the idea that aliens exist or extraterrestrial microbial life exists in space. I'm thinking that what is more important is that we need to have science and religion come on board first. I think that when we're dealing with government, I think we're going to be a little bit hard-pressed to get anything important coming out of the government. I believe that this is more or less a revelation that is significant. I think people should take this as a form of confirmation. I mean, for the longest time, I think we believe that aliens are out there. The majority of Americans, the majority of the world, if they know anything about it, believe it. I mean, it shows in our, Star Wars was mentioned. I mean, it shows in what we like to do in the theaters. I mean, if we go to movies like Contact or movies like Star Wars or Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Fourth Kind or any of the other alien films, I think it's because deep down we certainly believe that there is something more out there than just us.
Well, listen, I think everything you said is just, I think it is a confirmation that, hey, we're not crazy, you know, to a certain degree. Right. But at the same time, are you not suspicious of the mainstream media releasing information at this point? Because there's been so much disinformation, so much upside down information over the years. The operatives that they've been involved in this UFO. You talk about a cover-up's been going on since the 30s, probably, if not earlier than that. I mean,
the cover-up isn't the nuts and bolts. I mean, we've known that UFOs have existed for a long time, and people who say, "Well, I don't believe in UFOs," are idiots because there are unidentified flying objects. Now, the problem here is the disconnect between who's piloting them and what is happening. So I think when people say, are you suspicious that they're reporting that they've been investigating UFOs? No, I'm not suspicious at all, because of the fact that Project Blue Book, that was one that the government did, and they've been doing it since the 1950s and closed it in the 60s and 70s. But the idea that they've been continually investigating this with denial is something I think that is important. The fact that the mainstream news is reporting is very important, but they're very careful in not talking about who's honking the horns and kicking the tires of the extraterrestrial SUV. They don't want to go into that, and I think that is what a lot of people want. They want the confirmation of aliens, or they want the confirmation of anthropomorphic aliens that care about us. I don't think they're ever going to get that, really. I don't think they're going to get the care. I think what we're going to be getting is more of the same, like NASA just announced they're using artificial intelligence to look over the Kepler planets for possible life signs. The Antarctica discovery of creatures that live in hostile environments give them impetus to go out to Enceladus and Europa to investigate the icy moons of the Jovian system, which is something that I think for the longest time, when you have geothermal heating, that something has to be living under the ice of these two moons. Antarctica's proof that, and I even said on my show, I said, I think the proof of life will happen right here on Earth when we find something that appears to be not from this world that's living in Antarctica, which they have found. They found, and of course, Russia announced just a few weeks ago that there was bacteria, extraterrestrial bacteria that's forming on the ISS. NASA gets all angry saying, well, why did you use the A word, Russia? Well, it's because they have nothing else to say that it's alien. Yeah. And NASA, they get all bent out of shape because they're not the ones making the announcement. And that's been the case ever since the space race. I mean, there really wasn't a space race. Russia was just interested in space, and we were the fat kid on the block that went up to the Russian athlete and said, we're going to beat you in a race. Well, Russia didn't see it as a race. They saw it as a way to further their science. America got into the race business, and ever since then, they've been so full of themselves thinking, well, we're going to be the ones to make the announcement. It's like when Planet 9 was discovered out of Caltech. They said, well, there is no Planet X, there is no Planet 9, and we'll make sure we'll tell you when Planet 9 exists. Well, if you look at NASA as an acronym, it's never a straight answer. And it's always been that way with NASA. They never give us a straight answer. They only dangle cosmic carrots for us to follow and hope that there's life out in the cosmos. This report about UFOs, an investigation about the idea that they may be a threat, I think is a big news story. Next would be who's piloting them and whether or not they're aliens or something else.
Well, you know, I agree. But there's just so many levels and layers of truth or disinformation that has to be kind of peeled back through this onion here, because it's such a dangerous game, Clyde. It's so dangerous game that this whole inception, you know, became so secret, because when now you can't believe anybody or anything at this point unless you're in the higher levels of the organizations that are actually dealing with this ET contact. Because right now, how do we know if, you know, and I think the Rockefellers got involved in this back in the 50s and 40s, you know, and I don't know who trusts the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds out there these days, but I would say they're suspicious, right? So if they've been involved in reference to our space program or our space defense or whatever it may be, how do we know that the aliens haven't been here already? Say the not friendly aliens, and they're trying to keep out the good aliens now coming out, and this information is to try to scare everybody. Hey, let's build this big bubble and not let these good aliens coming in to help us, because these bad aliens been running the show for a long time. I mean, how do we know that's not true?
Well, I would say that I think you're onto something, because if you read, there's a book called Gods of Eden by William Bramley, and he said, and he's a historian, a war historian, he said that every time wars have actually broken out in the world, something miraculous has happened in the skies, whether it be UFO sightings or something else. And if you go back to the histories of World War II and the Real Society's meeting in Vienna, their whole point was to contact alien beings that they believed crashed somewhere in the Black Forest in the 1920s, and that they wanted to somehow create wonder weapons or flying saucers that they certainly were using against the Allies. You heard of the Foo Fighters, you've heard of these balls of light that they used to attack planes. And then for the longest time, the government was investigating something called, they were investigating the idea of Russian ghost rockets or European ghost rockets when they were involved with Operation Mainbrace. And if you look at that thing, that was the military investigating the possibility that UFOs were being seen over the Baltic Sea. Yeah. And it just seems to make sense that, you know, for the longest time, many of the UFOs we've seen have been exotic aircraft that we've invented. But then again, where did we get that information? I don't think it was from Roswell. I think it's been around a lot longer than Roswell.
Well, you know Bill Cooper. I mentioned to him earlier. I'm going to play a clip here for you where he talked about how the Rockefellers got involved with the alien aspect of back in the 50s, I believe, when Eisenhower was dealing with, he had two supposedly types of aliens. That group of aliens came that were supposed to be good. They said, we're not going to share any technology with you. We just want you to take care of your planet and make sure you stop killing each other. And then the second group came and said, hey, we'll share technology with you. Just let us do our thing. And I think because the first group said they didn't want the nukes, and the second group said, hey, keep your nukes, we don't care. And I think that we kind of went with the perhaps maybe not the greatest aliens section, if that's to be true. And this is a treaty that William Cooper talks about. But I want to play one clip of what he mentions real quick here about Rockefeller and his influences with the alien variable. Go ahead, Jesse.
Eisenhower knew that he had to wrestle and beat the alien problem. He knew that he could not do it by revealing the secret to the Congress, because, in fact, isn't that the same as telling the public? Early in 1953, the new president turned to his friend and fellow member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Nelson Rockefeller, for help with the alien problem. Eisenhower and Rockefeller began planning the secret structure of alien task supervision, which was to become a reality within 1 year. The idea for MJ-12 was thus born. It was Nelson's uncle Winthrop Aldrich who had been crucial in convincing Eisenhower to even run for president. The whole Rockefeller family, and with them the Rockefeller empire, had solidly backed Eisenhower. Asking Rockefeller for help with the alien problem was to be the biggest mistake Eisenhower ever made for the future of the United States and most probably all of humanity, as you will soon see.
So, you know, Clyde, you know Bill Cooper. You actually met Bill Cooper, William Cooper. Do you see him as a credible ufologist, or if that's the right word, or UFO?
Well, he wasn't really a ufologist. He was a Navy. He was in the Navy, and he certainly had information that was compelling. And a lot of it, believe it or not, is the inspiration for the X-Files. I know that Chris Carter indicated that Behold a Pale Horse was a major influence. Behold a Pale Horse, of course, was written by William Cooper. That's when I met him, because there was a guy by the name of Mills Crenshaw who knew him really well, and I worked with Mills in talk radio when I was younger. But you know, Bill Cooper, of course, you know, I can't verify everything that he talked about, but he certainly was the impetus for investigating things like the Majestic 12, or investigating, you know, Serpo, or any of the other programs that Eisenhower was involved with. But see, we can go back to Truman, Harry S. Truman, after 1947. We know that the Roswell crash happened, and if you look at the timing, Roswell happened in 1947, and just months later, the National Security State was organized. We had the CIA, we had the NSA, all being organized, and for what purpose? Well, I mean, we can all say that many of the CIA operatives who were moved into this country were basically German intelligence operatives. They worked with Adolf Hitler, and they were the ones that created the missile gap. And what did they know about secret weapons? Well, here's the gist of it. I mean, when you look at the Germans being brought here in 1943, Werner von Braun and others, a lot of them worked for Boeing, Martin Marietta. They worked for many of these aircraft companies in the Northwest. And what were the first sightings of UFOs? Well, we had the Maury Island affair in the Puget Sound area. We had the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting over Mount Rainier. There were 9 of them he saw. And then some week or two after that, we had Roswell. And who just happened to be in New Mexico at the time of the Roswell crash but Werner von Braun? And then where was he transferred? Wright-Patterson Base, Ohio, where they allegedly took the parts of this UFO that crashed, or this saucer, or whatever they called it, that crashed in Roswell. So they most certainly were aware of the technology. The reverse engineering probably went on with German scientists around just before World War II. That technology was being crafted and put together in the Owl Mountains, somewhere near the Black Forest, when they may have recovered something that fell from the sky. They've been back engineering aircraft for the longest time. If you look at the Horticraft of the World War II, you see that it was a flying wing type of apparatus, or some sort of saucer-shaped apparatus. When you look back at what the testimony was of Kenneth Arnold, he never said that he saw flying saucers. He said that whatever it was, they looked like flying shields that were going through the air, and they skipped across the sky like a rock or a saucer would skip across the water. And immediately the media lapped onto flying saucers. And the media also coined the phrase UFO. And the reason these all stick is because of the fact there seems to be a snicker factor that is always produced in the media, where people kind of giggle in the background and they say, oh, the truth is out there, or hey, news story that's out of this world. And they take all day to come up with these stupid you know, axioms that they throw into the news. But this is the first time, this report of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, this is the first time, I believe, that we have not seen in the news media a snicker factor going on, where they seriously have looked into this, the $22 million set aside from the $600 billion in defense to investigate the reality of unidentified flying objects, or unidentified aerial phenomena, as they call it in the military.
Yeah, and it is little, I don't say nerve-wracking, but a little unexpected that actually they would be doing this and not snickering at it. So it kind of makes me think, you know, especially if it's true, the Rockefellers and say the New World Order gang out there, and what your take is on that, they've been involved in this since the, for the most part, since the interaction they've had. Like I said, all this activity was happening back during Truman and Eisenhower and FDR to whatever degree, and now they've been involved all this period of time, and you see this New World Order. So it's to me, when like I saw Bill Cooper talk about this, Clyde, it's almost a direct connection now between the New World Order agenda, whatever that may be, as well as the alien variable. So there's a connection here. And
well, Ronald Reagan said The differences of the world would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside of this world. If we can create a common enemy against humanity, then we can put out the excuse that we need a globalist empire to fight an alien threat. And I think that is certainly something to take into consideration, and maybe the reason why it's becoming important to start revealing to the people that there are aliens out there. I believe that we've looked at, we can go back to the summit of 2030. I believe the United Nations has an agenda to establish world government by the year 2030. And I think it's going to take at least as long for people to acclimate to the reality of aliens and UFOs in order for them to say, we have not only an environmental crisis facing us, which of course climate change or whatever else is going on that they want to make up and scare us with.
Chemtrails.
They'll have another thing in the idea of aliens and UFOs. And I promise you that if they decide to reveal that there are aliens, they will not have to produce a body. They will not have to produce anything of proof, because if the government says so, then everybody will say, well, we knew it all along. And there'll be plenty of questions about Roswell and the abduction programs and mind control and all these things. But the truth of the matter is the conspiracy theorists have been talking about this for years.
Yeah.
And now the confirmation is here, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. I did a show last night, and I heard a lot of people going, well, I don't know if I believe this. I think I'm suspicious of it. Well, okay, you can be suspicious all you want. But for the longest time, people have been clamoring for any kind of government indication that they have been investigating UFOs, or at least investigating the alien situation. Well, we know that NASA has been saying, well, we're out there looking for alien life. SETI, we're out there trying to communicate with alien life. And yet people are like going, well, this has nothing to do with what I thought it was all about. It's just like Star Wars. I mean, everybody was like theorizing about what was going to go on in the next Star Wars film, and since it didn't happen the way they wanted it to, everybody's like pissed off and saying, I can't believe that this Star Wars movie was even made. I want it to be destroyed. I want it to be taken out. No, look, if it's not what you thought it was going to be, or if Luke, like Luke says, this is not going to end the way you think, I would say, well, okay, so it's not what you think it was the whole time. And gradually, it's going to be different than I think what you had planned. And there are going to be a lot of people who treat UFOs and aliens as a religion or some sort of cult, and immediately their dreams will be smashed. And you're going to see a lot of people who are going to turn this into some spiritual rainbows and happiness, when in reality, it's a lot more mundane, and it's far more terrifying than we could even fathom.
Right. No, I hear you. In fact, I think they've already done that. That's why I think we have to be very careful here, because, hey, Jesse, in a minute here, I want you to play a clip here about the underground, and he's mentioned the occult. Because there is an occult. There's a satanic occult going on right now. Everyone's aware of, more so on the internet than ever before. But this guy, Bill Cooper, was talking about this occult happening back in the 50s by the introduction of this one alien race that supposedly already has a treaty with them, and I want to hear your take on this too once I play the clip, and how it actually could be already here. We could be already experiencing this, and so now this release could be, hey, these bad aliens or these not good aliens who are dealing with the Rockefellers and New World Order guys are not only influencing us, like you said, on religions and in an occult basis, and have been for decades now, but now they want to shut down, create a shield to stop anybody else to come in who maybe want to help us. That's my biggest concern. Play the clip, Jess.
The treaty stated the aliens would not interfere in our affairs and we would not interfere in theirs. We were particularly interested that they do not interfere with anything that would affect our future, which has been violated. We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, that the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ-12 with a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis.
Okay,
and this
Jesse,
is not being done.
you could pause that for a second. So, Clyde, do you believe there could be a treaty already established back in the 50s that the aliens are already here? These aliens that are abducting, and you hear the horror stories, like you said, horrific stories. You talk to any of the researchers out there, they could tell you, and abductors, how from anal probes to births and things like that. That it could actually be true. There already has been a treaty, and we've already been sold out by our leaders of not only our country, perhaps leaders of the world. Could that already be happening right now? And then we're just now waking up to this? Could that be a reality?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it could be reality. I also think it's a reality if you would like to even go as far as to say it's a collusion process. I think we're seeing a collusion between ranking military officials who have security clearances, knowing that I would call it the cuckoo bird effect. I don't know if you understand what that is,
no,
but the cuckoo bird is probably one of the most, I would say, it's one of the worst birds out there. I mean, people tend to think that a cuckoo bird is crazy because there's a cuckoo bird, but the thing is that the cuckoo bird really is a conniving, clever bird. I mean, what it does is it gets into magpie nests, and they actually lay eggs in the magpie nests, and the magpies are fooled into thinking that they're raising their own young. But come to figure out that at the end, they're actually raising cuckoo birds. And so the cuckoo birds wake up, pop out of the nest, and what do? They take over the nest and they eliminate the magpies. That's something that I think would be similar to what's going on with the alien threat. The aliens are the cuckoo birds. They come in, they infiltrate, they do it silently, and we as humans don't understand that we may be raising a crop of hybrid alien children that are being tested and basically are changing the way we view the world. I mean, you take a look at how abrupt things have changed in the planet, how we're hearing about all these things like appropriations and resistance but what are they fighting against? What are they resisting? What are the appropriations? What are the microaggressions? All these things we hear about, I mean, we've never heard about before. And I think it's because of the fact that we're breeding a crop of children that are nothing like what we've ever seen before. We're breeding younger because we're looking at how generations, I guess, after the 1970s have looked younger and younger and younger, and it just seems to me that and you look at the diseases as well. Look at all these strange diseases that have cropped up over time. If you look at Columbus, or if you look at Magellan, or any of the other explorers that have come over to the New World, what have they brought with them? They brought their diseases, okay? And these diseases were killing the indigenous people. Well, when aliens come, you've got to think that they're bringing with them diseases because they have their own diseases. And so you hear about all these strange diseases like Morgellons and HIV and incurable bubonic plague or pneumonic plague. And you're wondering, either it is a biological genomic experiment or aliens are bringing it in because they have diseases and bacteria that we don't have any idea, what they are and how they react. And so, we're seeing these things happen, and science can't explain it. Why now we have a lot of viruses and a lot of bacteria that don't respond to treatments anymore. I mean, antibiotics can't treat all the bacterial viruses and problems, bacterial diseases that are happening, and we're in a panic. I mean, people in the future could actually die of a simple pneumonia because of the fact that antibiotics are not going to be able to cut it anymore. We've grown a resistance. Our evolution has kind of been thrown to a standstill, and scientists are saying this is as good as it gets unless we decide that we want to become more human plus or H plus with the idea of transhumanism or becoming more machine than human being.
Well, you know what? You can watch any movie out there these days, or you go watch Entertainment Tonight, and you'll see kind of, the transhumanist happening right in front of our eyes. We're going to take a break here, Clyde. When we get back, let's talk a little about the supposedly the underground tunnels and places, and perhaps, what's going on with the Dulce Wars, which you might have heard about back in the 70s, if that's any valid information there, too. We'll be right back with Clyde Lewis. He's an American Talk Radio host. You can catch him at groundzeromedia.org. He's an incredible man. You'll stay tuned and hear more about it. All right, we are back with Clyde Lewis. He's an American Talk Radio host who boy, he talks about so many fascinating things on his show. You really got to check him out. It's a Ground Zero, the radio show.
GroundZeroMedia.org.
Yeah, you can reach him at groundzeromedia.org. But, it's just incredible information he's sharing with people. And I love, isn't he a brilliant mind?
Yeah, he's really cool.
I know, right? Hey, Clyde, we're going to finish playing this clip, talks a little about the underground tunnels that Cooper talks about, and let's kind of jump into that for a second. All right?
Let's do that.
It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning each of the other. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. I have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened to those original 16 humans who left the Earth with the aliens. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the United States government. The base at Dulce is one. The base at S4 in the area known as Area 51 or Dreamland is the second.
All right. So he mentioned a few bases. Everybody kind of heard about Area 51. And I don't think a lot of people heard about Dulce Wars. Can you shed a little light on what you heard about that, and what if you can find that valid or not?
Well, that's a Phil Schneider story that was released. Phil Schneider, of course, is not with us. He was from Oregon, and he said that he was involved with an excavating group that was digging, and they accidentally uncovered an alien stronghold that was underneath the Dulce base. There's also rumors that there is an alien stronghold under the Denver airport. There's also reports of underground caverns and bases at S4, which is just outside of Area 51. It's the alien, the real alien annex of Area 51. Area 51 itself has been declassified. A lot of people don't know this, but Area 51, they've admitted that it exists. There were a number of CIA operatives that talked. In fact, a guy by the name of T.D. Barnes appeared on my show and talked about Oxcart, which was the military realm where they were creating secret weapons and secret planes to thwart the Russians during the Cold War. It was a Cold War operation. But to this day, there's several experiments that are still going on, mostly biological. Once again, working with biologicals that may be alien in nature. Of course, there's a tunneling facility that goes between Area 51 and several of other bases, including Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, which a lot of people consider to be another branch of Area 51, where they're working on space platforms, secret space program, lasers, and other things, including biological weapons that they have harvested from projects like Project Genesis, Project Stardust, where they actually sent probes out into space to take what is known as angel dust, or they used angel aerogel to remove dust from comets and meteors and other things to see if they can find the building blocks for life. And in fact, the Project Genesis that happened was a failure, according to NASA, because the capsule itself, as it was dropped or as it fell into the Earth orbit, actually crashed in the West Deserts of Utah. It could have been a lot worse, where they could have sent out all kinds of alien germs, but what they did is they contained it, and most of what they found, I'm sure, is being housed in the chemical and biological facility at Dugway, which of course is tunneled towards Area 51. There's also protection tunnels, like in the Ozarks. I was on Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, did an investigation about the Ozark tunnels. There's also Mount Weather, several other underground places where leadership can go in the event of a huge disaster, whether it be nuclear, volcanic, or otherwise. All those things are available to basically run the country in the wake of a catastrophe. So yes, there are underground bases, underground tunnels, underground strongholds. There is even underground facilities in Norway, where all of the seeds of the world are actually being held in case of a catastrophe. There's also Storm Mountain in Utah, where all the records of people are kept. Iron Mountain is another place where records of people are kept, just so every single person will be accounted for in the case of a national emergency. And of course, now they're asking people to send their DNA to places like Ancestry.com, have their telomeres pretty much analyzed, and a lot of that will be saved as well. So chances are, if you're sending any of your DNA to Ancestry.com, they'll have a record of your DNA as well, which eventually could mean that they could whip you up in a lab somewhere and you could live forever. It's some amazing
Clone.
technology and amazing things that are happening in the country right now and in the world that I think people need to pay attention to.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you're in the loop and you are paying attention. To me, it doesn't seem such a bit. It's not such a hard grasp to understand what we're talking about here, because once you allow yourself to look into it and get past the superficialness of the media and the mind control of what's being said in schools and what's being said in the typical mainstream media, and you really dig, you have to dig a little bit. You don't have to dig too hard, and you can find the rabbit hole, and it'll take you where truth is, and then you can go verify it yourself. I mean, it's not like you can't verify. You can verify this in these tunnels, and a lot of them you won't be allowed in. That's right. Suspicious right then and there. But it sounds like, okay, everything we're talking about, and you're on it, sounds like, okay, there's no aliens worried about in outer space. There's already aliens among us. Let's assume that to be true. There's already, and
aliens. Actually, if you really want to look at it, we are the aliens. Most of what we are. I mean, we are not habitable to this planet. I mean, we get sunburn. Gravity makes us have backaches and pains. Much of what our aging process is a phenomenon. Think about it. I mean, the minute we're born, we die. Aging is a dying process. We have cells dying in us because of cosmic radiation, even though we're in the perfect area far enough away from the sun. That doesn't discredit the idea that the sun itself is killing us, because our cells die every day, and we are dying every day as we age. So aging is the dying process. I mean, we're born to die. It's almost like we're burning. We are burning eventually until we burn out. And that shouldn't be. If the planet is a perfect place, I mean, life exists temporarily, but there are places that we're now finding in hostile environments where these small protozoa type creatures are living indefinitely, like turtles, in places that are very hostile.
Well, we could say the same thing for animals too. They burn, they die. Overexposure kills them. But with that being said, back to we know the humans and these dogs and cats aren't building these tunnels underground. If they signed a treaty with the presidents in the past, if that actually occurred, and they're here amongst doing whatever experiments, they're already here. They're already among us. Let's assume that for a second. Let's advance the conversation past this now. So if we're there, it's already been here. They're already infiltrated. They already got people like the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. They're all working in. They created the occult process to indoctrinate them, to possess whatever they got going on. If this is all going on right now, and here they're leaking out of the news just recently that, hey, you know what? Hey, we need to come up with a shield. We need to protect. We need to come up with defense here. Why would we want to enclose ourselves in with these people who are abducting us and mutilating us and animals? I mean, why do we want to shut down whatever else is out there? Because can it get any worse?
Well, I mean, if you have control of the fence, you can open the holes. I mean, what is CERN for? Yeah. What is Brookhaven for? What is Lawrence Livermore for? Yeah. They have, in fact, if you remember, there was a Chelsea Handler show where Moniz, who is the head of the Department of Energy, Secretary of the Department of Energy, when they asked him about the television show Stranger Things, they said, Stranger Things happens in Hawkins, Indiana, which is a fictional place, but they have a Department of Energy place where they're doing all these experiments with young kids and turning them into the Upside Down, which is a parallel universe. Isn't that funny? And Moniz kind of shook his head and he says, no, it's not funny at all. We experiment in the alternate universes and the parallel universes. We've done this many times. I'm sure that CERN has found itself in parallel universes as they're blasting and smashing particles with their D-Wave computers and advanced technologies. I mean, we're living in times where these things are highly probable. They haven't been, they haven't been shown to us. They haven't been confirmed by a mainstream source. But I mean, there's still people who talk. And when people say, well, no one can keep a secret, obviously they can't, because it becomes conspiracy theory before it ever becomes factual. Yeah,
Hitler said people will believe the little lies. I mean, people will believe the big lies. They won't believe the little lies, So, and the big lies are easy to believe because nobody wants to believe it. I mean, and plus, it just goes to show you the power of the mainstream media, and whoever controls the media, and we know who controls the media out there. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But whoever controls that media source people just because of the nature of the, I don't know, the temperament of the human mind, or the denial of the reality. They, I call it denial-based positive thinking. People don't want to look at reality what it is, because it's scary, and especially if this is going on. And, you'll have this kind of that, what is that syndrome called when you're, the Stockholm syndrome. You just don't want to believe things are happening, or you're going to love your captors. But I'm not going to the extreme where that's occurring. I'm just kind of like a theory here. If that is occurring, where they're already among us, they're already influenced us on a parapolitical level. They already influenced us on a physical level. They're abducting. They're doing harm. They're for our higher self. What's our next step? If that is occurring, what is our next step to take care of this? What do we do? Do we look for outer space angels, aliens from somewhere else who maybe are more benevolent than the ones who are already here? I mean, what would you suggest, or at least theorize?
Well, I mean, if they're among us, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, if they're here already, there's nothing we can do about it. If we are a product of them, then we have to go back in the timeline, which they have many times before. The fossil record's changing every day. They're talking about ghost species mating with other species, which indicate that probably, and they won't say alien, because of course alien conjures up all things science fiction, but what they will call it is something else. It's just like no one's going to say the Pentagon is investigating UFOs. They'll say, well, they're involved with something called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and beer joint. I mean, they'll give it some big title. And they'll say, oh, I mean, that has nothing to do with aliens. It has to do with aerospace threats. Well, okay. What's an aerospace threat? A missile, a projectile, a rail gun, some sort of a tungsten rod that can be released from a satellite that would cause a kinetic explosion without any nuclear payload. I mean, these are things that are part of something called a secret space program, which, exists. I mean, NASA has its front, which of course is the public front, where they do little experiments with kids, and they talk about possible alien worlds on the Kepler, with the Kepler examinations and the Kepler discoveries. But then there's a military aspect to it. And that military aspect is what we're looking at with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, is that they have some plane going around that is the mystery space plane. They no longer have shuttles, but they have mystery space planes going around, basically monitoring what's above us. They have huge telescopes that are monitoring whether or not we're getting signals or huge flashes or fast bursts or whatever. They're watching the magnetic field to see if there are any fluctuations, and the Earth itself is responding to those fluctuations. The Earth is responding by having a lot of earthquakes and volcanic activities, because we're messing with the magnetic core, and we're messing with the things in the universe that keep us pretty much held together. And that's the magnetic forces that hold us together. The minute we harness that magnetic force and create a fence, we'll be able to create shields like you see in Star Trek or Star Wars. The shield will protect us from any invaders that may want to fire on us. But then again, we don't know their advanced technologies and what those technologies are capable of.
Do you believe that people in the know, humans in the know, working with potentially these aliens for decades, they've been exposed to technology, 100 years plus technology than the average Joe out here living our life under the Federal Reserve mentality? Do you believe that?
Yes, I do. Several people I've talked with said that we're like 300 years ahead of what we see. That there's always experiments. Even warp drive is. I've even heard that warp drive exists.
Wow.
They just don't have the money to implement it.
Love me some Star Trek.
Certainly we'll be hearing about warp drive. We'll be hearing about full sail small aircraft being flown to Alpha Centauri to investigate whether or not there are worlds there, or Proxima Centauri, or some other area that they'll be able to send things to in 20 years. I mean, it's a 20-year drive, but at least it's a drive out into the cosmos in a quick amount of time.
Well, a lot of people talk about these satanic occults and this Luciferian world we live in, and to me, it makes more sense that perhaps if you call it Luciferian or satanic occults, and you hear all on the internet about the pedophilia and everything going on, but if it is a Luciferian environment, I would assume it's a low vibration or negative alien influence at that point, and here we're being controlled, manipulated, moved along for whatever purpose. Do you theorize, or anybody have theorized why they're here and what do they want to do with us?
Maybe I don't know what they're here for, really, unless, of course, they're here to check on their experiment. I mean, I'm kind of, I lean in a Fortean way, which is like, we live in a pantry, We're someone else's property, and every once in a while they pluck us out when they feel like it. It's like what Shakespeare says. He says, "As flies to one boy, so are we to the gods. They use us for their pleasure." Many times, you hear of these outrageous Fortean paranormal things happening, and it just seems to me that that's because of the fact that there are plenty of bubble universes that overlap. Mandela effects, where people once thought something was one thing and they change their mind and say, well, it's something else. I mean, we're raised to believe certain things, and all of a sudden it just doesn't make sense that it's not what we thought it was. And a lot of things aren't what we think it is, because I think it's because over time, timelines change. I mean, perfect example of this is when Donald Trump was elected president. Donald Trump, when he was elected president, people were already protesting things that he has never done. I thought it was interesting that the protests and the uprising that happened after his election, you heard so many people say, well, this is what he's doing, and this is what he's done, and this is this, and this, and this. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, he hasn't done a damn thing yet, and they're protesting things he hasn't done yet. And I'm thinking, what timeline are they in? Okay, so maybe they're convinced that they're living in some timeline where he's already destroyed the United States.
Wow.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well,
and then all of a sudden it kind of comes together. And we're wondering, you look at the Back to the Future movies, for example. Yeah. Always remember that Biff was the president of the United States and he lived in a big tower. Who's Biff? He's Donald Trump. How did that happen? Well, there's a theory. Donald Trump's father, or not father, his grandfather or uncle, I can't remember who it is, actually stole Nikola Tesla's plans. Nikola Tesla was the man who, he invented quantum theory and time travel.
Right.
So, I mean, could Donald Trump be a time traveler, and could he be an alien? I mean, there's so many ways that you can look at this, and it's just a weird world. As we explore even further, we're trying to figure out just why certain people are in certain positions in this world, and it just boggles the mind.
It does, and you could take it to the down the rabbit hole, and it could lead to insanity too, because especially time travel, which supposedly the Philadelphia experiment, interdimensional teleportation, and things like that. It's time traveling, and supposedly we're very close. People spoke about it. I mean, from them it's real, But
where did the Philadelphia experiment originate? Montauk, Camp Hero. What television show is the most popular on Netflix? Stranger Things. What was Stranger Things about? The Montauk experiments, which are time travel and remote viewing experiments done on little children, opening up the other side, opening up and upside down. They're trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us that, yes, we have ventured out into areas where perhaps we shouldn't be playing.
Right.
And we play in them. And what does it do to the timeline? What does it do to us? I mean, if a parallel universe dies, do we die with it? I mean, there's a lot of quantum entanglements that I think a lot of people don't consider because they just don't take the time to care. But yeah, quantum entanglements are real. We're looking at them every day, and one day we'll wake up and we'll find ourselves in a whole new different world where sanity is insanity, and we're in a rubber room going, why am I here? What happened? Why am I in this rubber room?
When you look at reality, I guess if you can call reality is really more science fiction than science fiction could ever be. And I think with what you're saying with time travel and what you're saying with the changing our time frame, to people would never really know. If you change time, you're just not going to know because you're just moving on forward as if that was the reality. So just like in the movies, what was that movie with Tom Cruise when he was he's a police officer trying to arrest people? I think it was him arresting people for a crime they didn't commit yet. Minority Report. So when you shift the time, you really don't know. Things just change. So say we can't prove that, and say that is occurring. So you're suggesting another potential reality is we could be the aliens from the future coming back to tell us what's going on. But there definitely seems to be Clyde. There definitely seems to be a very negative energy overall with some of the lack of compassion to humanity on many levels, not just wars. I'm talking about governments now, the Agenda 21, Agenda 30. I mean, it seems like, you go to the Georgia Guidestones. Here, I'm in Atlanta. Georgia Guidestones tell you exactly what their plan is to bring it down to the 500,000 people in the world. So there's definitely seems to be a negative net that is over humanity at this point. So,
well, what did Prince William say recently? He got up at a meeting and he said, one of the problems I'm seeing is that Africa's wildlife and its resources are being destroyed because people are just overpopulating. And then what's going on? They have a pneumonic plague that was released that it cannot be destroyed because it seems that a genomic experiment is going on here. So, and then you have Bill Gates. Well, I think the thing we need to do is we need to somehow reduce the population. And if we do that, we can create vaccines, and we can also release mosquitoes into the wild that could have or carry something that could find itself in the human body and maybe create some sort of a disease that would kind of kill off these people, and it would use plausible deniability to say that what they were part of is some iatrogenic artifact that could have killed them, and we'd have nothing to do with it. It's their bad luck if they got stung by a mosquito. It's their bad luck if they got stung by a needle that has something bad in it. But then again, in Zimbabwe, they're holding kids at gunpoint to get vaccines provided by the Gates Foundation. This is a culling, and it's happening. And yes, there are evil people out there that look at people as things. I mean, in the Batman movie,
but not just,
it's not about money.
Yeah.
It's about sending a message.
Yeah.
Everything burns.
Yeah.
Everything dies. And sometimes it's just a power play, and it has nothing to do with money, and it has nothing to do with gratification. It has everything to do with as looking at people as things and resources that can be ground up into mortar and served in bread. That's exactly what they see it as.
And if it is alien influence, perhaps like you said in the treaty, the occults and all that originated there in alien influence, influencing humans, possessing, whatever you want to call it. It seems to be, can't say a coincidence, but all these top dogs in the world, the Gates, who just kicked out of India for vaccinating and killing kids, but all these guys and mainly guys in the world are really doing evil or doing horrible things. And how do they get in those power roles? Is it just
money? See it as amoral. They don't see it as evil. They see that what they're doing is amoral and it has to be done. They have these amoral attitudes. And what would be the biggest alien attitude? Well, they look at us like cows.
Yeah. Oh,
look, the cows are restless. What should we do with them? Well, we can slaughter them. We can serve them up as meat. We can use their blood to make us live forever. It's like when Arthur C. Clarke did 2001: A Space Odyssey. What do you see in the beginning of the movie? Well, you see all these monkeys, and they're gathered around the monolith. The monolith is humming. Mm-hmm. It's an alien monolith. Mm-hmm. So the monkey goes up, touches the monolith, and he goes, ah, what have I done? Oh, my gosh, my brain, it's growing. Look at this bone. Bam, bam, bam. Throw it up in the air. It's a weapon. Kill with it, kill with it. And then we can use it as a spacecraft, and we can create missiles and nuclear warheads. And see, that's the thing, is that when the monkey became human, or when the monkey had sentience, or when the monkey knew that it could threaten the other monkeys, I think that's an alien. I think that's the alien brain talking. Right. We have one side of our brain that's mammalian, and one side of our brain that's more of a reptilian alien type of brain. Yeah. And when the reptilian alien brain takes over, it's basically to a point where a human doesn't care. That's what a monster is. A monster is a human that doesn't care. And the minute you stop caring about human beings, and the minute you start have rationale saying, well, they need to die because they don't agree with me, or they need to die because they have a darker skin, or this is the alien mentality. This is the idea of sectarianism, tribalism. It's the basic inheritance that we had given to us cellularly from our ancestors.
A reptilian brainstem.
People are turning towards that now. We are in the 21st century, but we act like we're living in the 13th century. It doesn't make any sense.
You touched on so many things in that talk right there, which is brilliant. Especially the reptilian brainstem, like you said, from a mammal perspective or for a reptilian perspective, and you hear the stories about the DNA being messed with through other aliens over the thousands of years, and from a reptilian perspective and a human or mammal perspective, whatever it may be, and you just don't know what's true or not. But it is easy to say that you just said, when we're pulling from that lower part of our brain, and we lack our compassion, and like in Star Trek, one of my favorite lines of Star Trek was, don't limit your compassion for someone or something based on your estimation of their intelligence. And once you go that direction, and we do it every day. I mean, you eat veal. Anybody eat veal here? I mean, we put these little tiny lambs or little tiny calves in a dark room once they're born, and then we take them out, and we slaughter them, and we eat them.
Isn't veal deer?
Well, I mean, whatever the calves, whatever the cows.
That's venison.
Venison, yeah. So I mean, we do that every day, and just as like you're saying, a higher intelligence is treating us the same way we would treat these other animals, and so here we are, just like aghast. My God, we're being tortured and abducted and mutilated, and here, everyday basis, we do the same thing to another species we consider less intelligent.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the alien mindset, is that we find ourselves, and that's why I think that when so many people think to themselves, well, the aliens are coming and they're here to save us, I say, check that. They're not here to save us. They're here to eat us. And that's always been the case. They're here to eat us in some way. They're here to destroy our bloodlines. They're here to corrupt our progression. And when it's all over with, I mean, ask me, ask yourself why in the Bible God preferred a blood sacrifice rather than a vegetable sacrifice. Because our gods are meat eaters. Our gods are blood suckers. Our gods like blood and meat, and they like it a lot. And when we have carnage, and when we have blood and meat, and when you hear the rumors of, like, for example, vampiric leadership, where they use the blood of the young to stay alive, and you hear all the rumors about whether or not they eat babies, I mean, it makes you wonder, why we have so much reports of child molestation, the robbing of innocence, and the destruction of virtue. It's because of the fact that these vampires, for lack of a better metaphor, exist in leadership. I mean, why was Count Dracula a count? Why is it that the frog had to be kissed by the princess in order to become a prince? Because deep down he was a reptilian creature who hid behind the mask of a human form. Beauty and the Beast. It's always been the case in these old Grimm's fairy tales that things do not appear as they seem. I mean, what Snow White was not about some beautiful princess that a prince wanted. It was about some prince who was a necrophiliac who wanted to have sex with a dead body. I mean, these are things we don't hear in our storybook, bedtime stories. They're literally dead time stories, and they reflect upon the grossness and amorality of monsters. And monsters exist. It's like that line from Alien. My mom told me once that there were no monsters, no real ones, but there truly are monsters, and many of them are leading us today.
Listen, I can't argue with on that level what you're talking about, because I'm seeing it, at least through my research as well. But Clyde, let me ask you a question. These creator gods, let's call them creator gods, the ones who are the meat eaters, the ones who are, whether they're reptilian or whether they're, the Greys, or, there's probably, I heard last, it was 13 different species of aliens, some better than others. And the best analogy I ever heard so far was, the purposes of aliens and the different types of species of aliens is kind of similar to when like France, Spain, and England came to America for the first time. They all came for different reasons. Some came to populate, some came to steal gold, some came to, steal whatever it may be. And so they all come from different agendas. And it seems like the ones who stay, perhaps the ones who are here, may be more so like they own us for whatever food source that may be, because that's just the nature of what we've been experiencing. And let's assume that's true. And we explain a lot with the satanic Bohemian Grove and how our leaders, Kissinger's, and these guys are just psychopaths. I mean, they're literally psychopaths, possessed, whatever beings who are following this protocol of energetically and physically feeding off on humans to whatever degree. If that is all true, do you believe that there is something higher than these creator gods that you believe in?
Oh, I believe in God.
More powerful than these creator gods?
Well, I believe it in a lot of respects. I think God is an observer. He may intervene at times, but I think likely no. I think that what God has done is he's given us more power than we realize, and I think people are afraid to use that power. We're told all the time, well, if you use that power, you're actually tapping into things you shouldn't be tapping into. I call BS on that. I think that the human consciousness and the human mind is capable of so many things. I kind of lean towards what Philip K. Dick said about the Iron Prison, that, we lived in a place where we were all superheroes. And at one time we said, well, we're tired of the superhero thing. We want to become more human. So we got to go somewhere where we can, learn pain and pleasure and learn empathy and sympathy and learn how to be angry and hateful and all of these things. And we have to face adversaries, and we have to be heroes and step up to the plate. And that what's really frightening about it all is we get to the point where we're beginning to understand it all. We get to the point where we're, finding out our true powers and our true self-worth. And by that time we're ready to die. And that's unfortunate for some people.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm hoping, that I somehow get to a point where I can use that knowledge and have it for a while and then, die later. It's just one of those things that, it's the luck of the draw. It's the roll of the dice, and the trickster is always rolling the dice, and you have to outsmart the trickster. And you can call the trickster what you want, the Joker, the devil, whomever, but it's something that is there. It's an opposition force. We can call it evil if we want. I don't really believe that evil is a reality. I think it's more of a construct. It's something that we place on things we don't understand. Once we understand them, they're less evil. I think that wickedness exists. I think that immorality exists. I think that cruelty exists. I think that human beings can be the cruelest creatures against their own kind. They can be the cruelest creatures against animals. They can be the cruelest creatures to anything. That doesn't necessarily make it evil. It makes it sick and psychotic and wrong. And some of the, and once again, we can go back to the idea of the alien mind. There's some who have more alien minds than others, and those alien minds look at us as nothing more than resources to either eat, destroy, or shed blood for. And I think that I think is the mystery, is that there are those among us who tap more into their alien mind than they do in their godlike mind, which is the mammalian sympathetic mind. And I think that there are wise gods. There are, and God for me has always been like an acronym, Grand Order of Developers. There is a grand order, and they're the ones who developed us. Let us go down and make man in our own image after our likeness, not I will go down and do it. There are many that will go down and do it, because I think that we all at one time had a plan to do something where we can come down and experience something that is more than just our superhero. I mean, Superman is boring. I mean, he can do anything. But coming down, and I remember when he became Clark Kent for real, and he wanted to be Clark Kent more, that was far more interesting than him basically being there all the time to save us all.
Right.
I think that a savior's great, and external saviors are okay, but I think we lean too much on external saviors, and I think at times people, rather than believing in Jesus or something like that, they're haunted by Jesus more than anything. They're haunted by the idea that if they don't stay the way they're supposed to stay, that the ghost of Jesus will come and destroy them or ruin them or make them unhappy. No, we are supposed to revere our saviors. We are supposed to give adoration to our heroes. There have been many in our lifetimes, but I don't really feel that people literally understand the purpose of the monomythic hero. We see them in movies, we see them in books, comic books, we read them in books, but to actually have someone that they can actually touch and say hello or see, I think we're trying to find that, and that's why politics right now are so dangerous, is because politics create external saviors that we really should be careful of, because they're just human beings, or in some cases they could be aliens. We don't know.
Yeah, and you don't know their agenda. You brought up some great points here. And do you see it harmful, or do you see it doesn't really matter that, whether you're talking about Christians or some other religious group, that they see things more in an abstract manner, like they see demons, they see the devil, they see evil, or you see it's healthier to have a perspective that the same players, instead of labeling them that or label them angels, they could be aliens, they could be more of less of an abstract and more of a concrete. Do you see it really mattering in the end, or do you see
I think the big question is, why did God create the devil in the first place? I mean, it's to make us stronger. The opposition makes us stronger. That's the whole point. I mean, I'm not saying, hey, we need to step into the dark side to find out what the light side's about, but understand and have a respect for the dark side. I think that knowing what the dark side is doing or what the left hand's doing, rather than always thinking about what the right hand is doing, I think it's healthy to understand the left hand. And I remember when I talk about the devil, or when I talk about Satan on my show, people say, "You're so Satan obsessed." I go, "No, I'm really not." I just think that it's important that we're all enveloped in this beautiful light of Jesus Christ. We're all enveloped in this beautiful light of God or whatever. But in the long run, most Christians, and I can say this, and I don't feel bad about it, I don't think most Christians understand the devil. I think they just know that, hey, I have this bleach, this chlorine bleach I can use to wipe out Satan, and it's called Jesus Christ. And I say, you know what? It's not that easy. And they always get mad at me. They say, "Oh, yes, it is." I go, "No, it's not that easy. Devils are getting clever." And even the Pope said, hey, don't think that you can outsmart the devil with just some simple hocus pocus and holding the Bible in front of him. It's not going to work. Devils now are cunning. They can lure you in, and they can bring you to a point where you're not even understanding that you're doing things that you used to loathe. You're becoming something that you've hated for so long, and you eventually become a monster when you don't care anymore. We have to care. We have to love. We have to have compassion. And if we're losing that, and we're seeing how we're treating one another, the devil has already won. And
Well,
we won't even realize that we've converted. We won't even realize that we're in the devil's hand or in his grasp until someday we look back and say, man, we were a lot different back then. Now we're hateful, we're angry, and we certainly look at other people as somebody that we can either bomb, kill, or we can look at countries that don't necessarily believe in what we believe in and turn them into parking lots. That kind of attitude is psychotic, and that kind of attitude is pretty much alien, in my opinion.
Unbelievable. And it's the frog in the warm water, like you're talking about. You don't even realize that you're changing based on that you're deviating from compassion, whether you say Jesus or you love, whatever. When you deviate from that energy, that frequency, I call it frequency, that when you deviate from that frequency, you don't even realize that you're doing things, like you said, that you didn't realize you would be doing, or believing things that you believe that you didn't think you would. So I just think that's brilliant information, and it seems like you have a really great bigger picture on things right now, and I'm so glad that you spend your time, Clyde, focusing on the details and verifying this information and sharing and entertaining, as well as informing more so your listeners and people around the country, around the world, with your information. And I want to thank you for coming on and spending this this time with us and staying over a little bit too. You're a fascinating man. I really enjoyed this interview and spending time with you.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being here. And anytime, let me know. I certainly love to express these views, because I think we're lacking a lot in at least grounding ourselves and understanding that the paranormal is becoming more normal. Yeah. And it's not scary when you understand it fully.
Yeah.
If you keep yourself in a finite mind when we live in an infinite universe, I think you're missing out on a hell of a lot.
Oh, and it's boring. This is so much funner, isn't it? This is fun.
It is. It's great to think. It's great to think outside the box. It makes me sound crazy, but I don't think I'm as crazy as people think I am.
Oh, listen, it's all the opposites now. What was crazy is sane. What was insane is sane, right? So, anyway,
exactly.
you want to catch Clyde Lewis? Catch him at groundzeromedia.org. Groundzeromedia.org. Don't miss his shows. That's fantastic. Listen, Clyde, thanks. Hey, hang on for 1 second, okay? Before we close out here, all right?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to thank you again. All right, guys, thanks for listening in. What a great wake-up hour. Back in action, huh, Jess?
Yeah, this was a really good episode.
I know. All right, guys, we'll see you later. I think another show tonight, Manifesting Hour.
The Manifesting Hour, yeah.
There you go. Oh, Catherine, she's going to be taking care of it. Could you guys hear from over there? You could have just listened to the radio or the headset. I could have got you on there, but can you hear me, Clyde?
Yes.
All right. Listen, thank you again. Wonderful. I really enjoyed it very much so. And in the future, I'd love to be able to get you in on another show, talk more about kind of religious things and maybe the misinterpretation of religion over time. Is that a topic that would incite you?
Most of my studies were in theology long before I got into this.
All right, great.
I of course have been involved in religion a lot, and then it's like I say, I was a practicing Christian, got real good at it, and now I'm retired, but I like to talk about it all the time. So.
Well, great, because I think there needs to be kind of a logical, rational approach to it. I'm not saying all spirituality or religion is rational, logical, but I think having topics on that where people could you don't have to just be so abstract about things and then just live in this black and white world, because we live in a
dogmatism is just so boring anymore, and it's like the idea that look, if you want to live in a dogmatic religious world, so be it, but there is practicality now, and I think we need to find a way to make religion, or at least a belief in something greater than us, far more practical and far more enticing. More people would rather go see Star Wars than attend church, and it's because church is boring. It really is.
I agree. Anyway, I wanted to thank you again and appreciate the information. I will get the videos out to you here shortly. What you probably want to do, Jesse, is get this one sent to Brittany so she can edit, put some good pics on it, and make it a real good one. Then we'll send you the Spreaker and the internet, and we'll rebroadcast it again too, as well as in addition to the Facebook version of it.
I'd love to get on my Facebook as soon as possible.
All right, great. Yeah, it's live. It's live now. Oh, really? Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, great. And then we'll get the YouTube version out to you once we get it edited in a couple of days. She'll fix it up, and then we'll get YouTube version to you right away.
Fantastic.
Hey, Clyde, listen, thanks again, man, and I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
And,
All right, take care.
big shout out to
Great
Ron.
job. I really had a great time. Thank you so much.
Same here, same here. Tell Ron we said hello, too.
I will. All right. Take care.
Bye, Clyde.
Bye-bye.